This one is, gosh, this one is so important um, because it can restore marriages, it can restore careers, it can restore vitality, it can restore uh, like passion and interest to not only a relationship but even life. And that is the thought for today. And it goes like this: numbness isn't deadness. Numbness isn't deadness, meaning that sometimes we might be feeling numb towards something, but that doesn't mean there's no something. Sometimes the fact that we can't feel anything about something is because there's so much something that it's too overwhelming to feel, and the system just shuts down. A lot of times you hear this in marriage. One of the things that we'll talk about today in the marriage event is that you will hear couples sometimes kind of talk about feelings have gone, or they feel numb, towards their spouse or towards their relationship, and they think, oh, it's dead, it's over, there's nothing left here for me, when actually the numbness is just because you can't feel what is there, and that doesn't mean it's dead. Also, this plays a part in things like PTSD. Some of the most severe PTSD cases that that I've ever worked with, the person would come in kind of initially and just talk about, they didn't know they had PTSD, never had a flashback, never had any kind of anything related to that, but they'd come in and their initial complaint might be, I just kind of feel numb in life. Well, what they didn't know was their system had to go numb because it really was overwhelmed by so much that they weren't numb about. And also, here's another thing about relationships. And when you go numb towards relationships or even towards life, there's a pretty known trail that we know happens inside of people when you experience something something, either a lack of something or something painful. It's pretty much what you will see an infant go through. And that is, let's say that you have a need that's not being met, okay? Or you have something that hurts that happens in a relationship, okay? And this is a line here, if you can see on the screen. And this is point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes like that. And so it happens up here in the beginning. Well, what do we do when either we're hurt or we're not having a need met? What's the natural thing to do? Wah, wah, wah. That's what a baby does, right? They protest. You get angry. And somebody's doing something that doesn't feel good. You're not numb, you feel anger, right? And that anger is designed to let you know something's wrong and I need to protest this in a civilized way. What that means is we go to the person and say, you know what, that hurts when you do that. Don't do that. Or I need you to show up and I feel abandoned, or whatever it is. That's the protest part. But the anger fuels the protest. And we use that energy to go resolve the problem in the relationship. Now, the anger doesn't mean screaming. It doesn't mean burning the house down. It doesn't mean, hitting somebody. It doesn't mean, those are all, what do you call those? Those are tactics to address the problem. Those are really bad tactics to address a problem, because what we find is the more against and aggressive somebody uses their anger to go, like if you start to yell at somebody, right? Or something, using your anger in an aggressive and an adversarial way, it leads further away from resolution, obviously, because the other party is going to get defensive, probably. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, it breaks relationships. That's why one of my favorite verses is in Ephesians, I think it's chapter 6, where a little bitty phrase, it's really interesting. It says, be angry. In fact, that word there comes from an Old Testament passage that means to shake. You're just so enraged, right? That's what it means. It's like embody your anger so you feel it, because that means you're alive. And here's what the verse says: be angry, and in your anger, don't sin. So we've got this anger, and that fuels us emotionally to go to the higher reasoning, higher judgment, higher regulatory functions of our brain, and use that anger to let me know what's wrong, and I regulate, and then I calm down, and then I go talk to the person. All right. What does that have to do with numbness? Well, sometimes you go talk to them and they don't listen. Sometimes a baby screams and nobody comes. And so then what happens after protest if your protest is not heard? And the person you're with, or the life that you find yourself in, or the resources that are available to you, do not answer your protest, which we are designed to get answers to our protest. It's good to protest. It's good to say to your spouse, that hurt, don't do that. And if they listen, then what happens? We reverse, we do a U-turn, and we go back up to the beginning, and we're fine. But if your protest, if your anger, if you're abused, if you're molested as a child, if you're abandoned, if you're not fed, all of that, and you're wanting somebody to listen and nobody's listening, then you go to step 3. And step 3 is despair. Despair. You're not going to have your need met. It's hopelessness. Well, the human organism can stand hopelessness about a millisecond. I remember way back when, I think it was Hal Lindsey that said, and I don't know the right numbers on this, but a human can survive so long without food, so long without water, so long without oxygen, but not 1 second without hope. And so if we're feeling hopeless, we can't stand that feeling. So what does the system do? Hits the switch and goes numb. It detaches. Now, this is why a lot of those extreme infant parenting programs are so absolutely horrible, that teach people to not respond to a crying infant. Oh, eventually they'll shut up. Yes, they will. They will go numb. That's what they'll do. You're right. They will shut up. So will a wife. So will a husband. So will a kid. When their cries for help aren't heard, they will go numb. Yeah, say, oh, what a good baby. No, it's a starving baby, is what it is. Now, that doesn't mean you always pick up, when the word wean in the Bible, you wean a baby. You know what the word wean means? We think of, they got to be weaned. You know what wean means in the Hebrew? It means to have been dealt bountifully with. So after a baby's full and after they're, warm and everything's good, and you do that then gradually you can start to, you'll get to this point where they're fine, and they go, it's like when I got Finley, our Doberman puppy last year, put her in the crate. She had been weaned, and she didn't like being in a, but after a couple of nights, don't take her out. You don't pick them up all the time, every little whimper, but we don't deprive people either. So that's the part I'm talking about. So numbness is a final stage of not having pain listened to, and it's a final stage of not having needs met. And that's sometimes why people go numb in a relationship. So just because you're numb, don't equate that with there's nothing there. Oh, I'm fine. And don't equate it with hopelessness, because here's the good news. The Bible has a theme, so does all of psychological healing. And that is, got some bad news for you that's really good news. Oh yeah, you can feel good. You just got to do a U-turn and walk back through all the stages. Oh my gosh. You mean I gotta get out of numb and go to feeling? Yeah, we gotta do that. So we gotta open up, we gotta walk back through and the pain and the despair, and then the anger and the protest. And that's got to be heard and listened to. And then we get reconnected and we come back to life. Just want to say a little bit about numbness. If you've gone numb, that doesn't mean something's dead. It means something is really waiting to be healed. It's waiting to be heard, and it's waiting to be cared about. So don't give up hope just because you're numb. You need one or both, one of two things. You need healing to have that need met for what's happened. And then you need to change, have the circumstances change going forward. So you're getting fed. So you're getting heard. But numbness is, if you feel numb, find somewhere to go talk about it. It can lead to great healing.